Welcome back, everybody, to the deep dive series. Today, we are talking about the Syracuse Orange. Fran Brown comes in and takes over a program that is a unique situation, and he's one of the more popular coaches in this new coaching carousel set of hires. It'll be fun to see what he can do. This is a team that went 6-7 in 2023, and it's a whole new coaching staff, and he brings in quite a bit of talent, some really big names, if you will, definitely some notable names, and it'll be fun to see what he can do. He comes from Georgia, obviously. Offense coordinator brings with him Jeff Nixon. Elijah Robinson's a name that everyone's keeping an eye on the defensive side of the ball. And this is a team that was struggling both offensively and defensively. Obviously, everyone expects Fran Brown to do a lot of good things for the defense, but we'll see what happens offensively as well. I like the talent level that they have coming back. And when you look at some of the players that return, a big one that comes back from injury, there's a lot of reasons to like Syracuse in 2024. Now, that being said, we'll look at the transfer portal. This is a program that lost quite a bit of talent in the transfer portal, but also added quite a bit of talent as well. Now, let's start with the losses. Juwan Price wasn't really a big loss, if you ask my opinion. You kind of get more of that rotational player that's out. And you still have good talent at the running back position. Damian Alford's a player that has the potential, but just couldn't realize it at Syracuse. So he is out as well. The two biggest losses, though, to me, have to be Stephon Thompson and Leon Lowry. Losing two big linebackers for this defense was one of the more disappointing departures, but that's going to happen when you hire a new coaching staff. That's just part of how this works in college football. That being said, the staff did a great job of finding talent to fill some holes and replace certain guys. One of the names that we've talked about in the transfer portal a lot is Ohio State transfer Kyle McCord coming to Syracuse. We'll see what he can do in a new system. I've got a lot of scrutiny at Ohio State for what he couldn't do. And now you get him in a new opportunity, a fresh start at Syracuse, an offense that could be really fun to watch and kind of has a similar situation where he has a lot of talented and maybe some bigger targets to hit downfield. So we'll see what he can do. FAU transfer Michael Johnson Jr. was an interesting addition as well, because while he is listed as a quarterback, we'll see where this staff wants to put him. Justice Ross Simmons was a later addition just within the last couple weeks or so from Colorado State. That's an underrated addition. Another guy that Kyle McCord can find downfield. Savion Washington comes in from Colorado. Duke Chestnut returns after transferring from Syracuse to LSU. He is back. That's a huge addition. Devin Grant from Buffalo is going to be another name to watch as well. The biggest name, though, is Fadil Diggs coming in from Texas A&M. One of the more surprising additions was getting him in the transfer portal. I think that turned a lot of heads. That definitely caught a lot of people's attention, and it's easy to see why. This is a team that has plenty of talent to make a run. I think a lot of people expect Syracuse to make some noise in the ACC. And I think that's kind of like the default. When you hire a coach that is popular in the college football world, everyone expects them just to do really well right off the bat. And I like Fran Brown. I think this was an interesting hire for sure. We'll see how it turns out. And obviously, there's a lot to be excited about when you're talking about Syracuse and a fresh start. But as we saw with Dino Babers, there is definitely a unique set of challenges when it comes to winning at Syracuse. You have a unique set of circumstances that require you to do some different things. So we'll see how Fran Brown adjusts, but it's really exciting when you get a new coach, and it builds that hope for the fan base. And already he's making an impact, and we're going to see it in the most important position on this team, and that's the quarterback position. Kyle McCord, when you look at what he did last year, well, threw for over 3,100 yards and 24 touchdowns. So his stats by no means are disappointing. But when you watched Ohio State play last year, you saw a number of things that fans either just expected a different level because it's Ohio State, and it's easy to see why. Fans expect big things at Ohio State. Fans expect you to compete for national championships. And when you lost CJ Stroud, you knew that this was going to be a quarterback battle that you needed to watch. And Kyle McCord just didn't meet fans' expectations. But again, that's the bar that Ohio State sets. And it's not that Kyle McCord was a bad quarterback. He just didn't meet the expectations that Ohio State fans had. Whether that's fair or not, he just didn't meet him. That's we can at least just say that. That being said, to me, this is a really good addition. I think that you're getting a solid quarterback that gets a fresh start. He comes into a program that is doesn't have the same set of expectations as Ohio State. You're going to get a player that will probably thrive a little bit more in these new set of circumstances and in this new set of expectations. Obviously, has to hold off Carlos Del Rio Wilson, who I don't think is much of a threat to take over the starting job from Kyle McCord. But it'll be fun to see how they utilize both of these quarterbacks. I think that Del Rio Wilson will still be a part of this offense. It's just a matter of how much. LeQuint Allen set to have a potential big year. I think that his speed could be a factor for this rushing attack, a rushing attack that finished 48th. When you lost Sean Tucker, you knew that you had to replace the running back position at some point. You knew that it was going to be tough, but you also knew you had talent on that in that position group. Yassine Willis could be another guy coming in as a three-star freshman. The staff really likes what they got in him. He could be someone that is stepping up in a big way. Now we'll see what happens with this offense. Again, a lot of that hinges on what McCord can do, but this passing attack to me feels like it's going to be pretty good. Umari Hatcher is one of the names to keep an eye on. 482 yards. This is going to be a big pass catching group. When you look at Umar Hatcher, Justice Ross Simmons, and the tight ends you look at as well, Dan Villari and Aronde Gadsden. This is a big group. 6'3" for Hatcher. Ross Simmons is 6'3", Villari 6'4", Gadsden is 6'5". Hatcher is probably the most unknown name of this group, but one who could take a step forward. And if he does, this passing attack will be really fun to watch, really tough to stop. Justice Ross Simmons played for a Colorado State team that is set to have a big year, and I expected him to be a part of that, but he surprisingly entered the transfer portal, ends up at Syracuse. This was an underrated addition by Fran Brown. You're getting a guy who has the speed to open up the field. He has the ability to make big plays. You saw that last year. Now he's probably playing a little bit bigger role, so he enters the spotlight a little bit more. Whereas if he stayed at Colorado State, he's kind of in the shadow of Torrey Horton, and it's easy to see why. Horton's an absolute stud. So now Justice Ross Simmons looks for his opportunity to be that guy. Can he handle that pressure? We'll find out. The tight end position is very interesting because when you look at, we'll talk about Dan Villari first, just because he's so intriguing because you don't see this very much. This is a guy who is a contributor as a passer, as a runner, and as a pass catcher. Completed almost 70% of his passes, obviously very limited, but threw for 177 yards, one touchdown and two picks. So obviously he's not a game changer by any means, but still that wrinkle gives you flexibility that I don't think people realize. 326 yards, 5.9 yards per carry, two touchdowns. So on the ground, definitely a factor at 6'4", 235 pounds, just incredible. And then 20 catches for 180 yards and three touchdowns. So a total of 683 yards and six touchdowns on every single level that he's contributing. A very fun, versatile Swiss Army knife that people probably aren't talking about nearly enough. But that being said, it's still going to be interesting to see how this staff utilizes his skill set. How do they figure out what he's going to be good at in this offense? And can he be more of a factor as a pass catcher? There's going to be other guys like Donovan Brown, Jackson Meeks that are going to step up and potentially play a bigger role. They have talent. Again, talent is not going to be a problem. It's just a matter of who's going to produce. Now, the name that everyone is, I don't want to say everyone's excited for, but just the anticipated return of Oronde Gadsden. Foot injury last year put a damper on the 2023 season for Syracuse. They obviously limited his production to just 67 yards and 1 touchdown. Him coming back, it brings back the excitement, but you also kind of have tempered expectations because you're not sure, is he going to be 100%? Is he going to get back to where he once was? Coming back from that foot injury, it's going to be difficult. You may not have the same explosiveness that you once did, and that's going to be tough to overcome. Can you fight back and get back to, at one point, people considered him a potential first round pick? That is what people are probably going to expect from him. They are expecting that level of performance, that level of production. And I just don't know if Gadsden can do that. If he can, watch out for this team. Watch out for this passing attack because that's how special Gadsden can be. And with teams focusing most of their attention on him, that opens up the field for guys like Hatcher, Ross Simmons, Brown, Meeks. Those guys will thrive because Gadsden requires so much attention. If he's back to that, it's going to give us a lot of exciting things. It gives Kyle McCord another big time weapon. After throwing to Marvin Harrison Jr., you're just not going to get that same level. But Oronde Gadsden could be, I don't want to say that on that same level because it's not, but close to that level in terms of production, assuming he gets back to 100%. The other factor with that is how do they keep Kyle McCord protected? Because at times with Ohio State, when McCord couldn't find guys downfield, whether that was a lack of separation or the fact that everyone was just mauling Marvin Harrison Jr. in terms of attention, you have to have a backup plan. But part of that is going to be with protecting your guys up front. And this is an offensive line that brings plenty of experience. I don't think I have too many concerns about what this group can do. It's just a matter of production. Enrique Cruz comes in with 18 starts under his belt. Jake Bradford has 11 starts, but has 23 games of experience. I think that you're looking at an offensive line that will be much better because you're looking at an experienced group. It's just a matter of can you get chemistry early on? And this is a team that also brought in some talent via the transfer portal. The starters, though, feel like they're pretty set, but this a group that I think has some good depth. Johnny Reed is at center, 13 starts for him. Mark Petrie has 11 starts. Demetrius Weatherspoon is an interesting player to watch, a new face that's going to make a lot of noise and a lot of exciting plays for this team. Even if you're not going to do that, you have plenty of tackle options behind it. We talked about Savion Washington. Savion Washington wasn't exactly elite at Colorado. In fact, Colorado's offensive line was not a very good group last year, but Savion Washington has some potential that you can definitely utilize. You can definitely get something out of him. And I think he's a solid rotational player. I think that there's a floor that you can bet on, a floor that you can elevate and make sure that you're just not struggling as much as what you saw with Colorado last year. Joe Cruz is another backup at guard. I think that this is going to be a solid group. Staying healthy will obviously be the key. But up front, you have to think that this is going to be a better offense than what we saw last year. Running the ball should be still the same. You should still expect a solid rushing attack. It's just that a group that finished 116th in passing should be much better, and a group that finished 92nd in points per game. And when you only score 23 points per game, you're expecting your defense to step up and do a lot of extra work. And while I think this is a Syracuse team that I think handled things pretty well, you're looking at a defense that still requires an offense to help them out every once in a while. But that being said, I'm excited to see what this defense can do. You look at, we talked about Fadil Diggs up front, and that's going to be the name that everyone focuses on. The ACC already has his name circled. Every offensive coordinator that they'll face knows that they have to have a plan for Fadil Diggs. Now, he's still going to make his impact. He's still going to make his name known. He's a great player. He's going to do what he does best. But one thing that they need is they need to ensure that other players can step up because even though, Diggs had 11 tackles for loss at Texas A&M, but what he had at Texas A&M is he had other players that required extra attention as well. And that's probably going to be the biggest challenge for this defensive line for Syracuse. Do you have other players that can command a lot of attention from the teams that you face? Fadil Diggs can't do it all by himself. He can't just take double teams and nobody else steps up. So on the other end, Dennis Jaquez Jr. has a big opportunity in front. 6'4", 254 pounds. I really like what he could do. Even throwing in a guy like Chase Simmons, there are a lot of questions that you have right now with this group. If it's Simmons or Jaquez, Isaiah Hastings, you have guys that need to step up in a big way because Fadil Diggs will do his part. It's just who else is going to play their role really well. Now on the interior, you're kind of inexperienced in a way, but you also have some really exciting potential. Richard Perry obviously does not have the stats that you want, but I know that the staff is excited about what he can do for this team. Kevin Jobity is another guy who can step up in a big way. Had a solid year, 7.5 tackles for loss, 2.5 sacks. I think that he is set for another solid year on the interior, and you'd like to see him maybe bulk up a little bit on the interior because you're going to face a lot of good offensive lines in this ACC conference. You're going to see a lot of talented offenses, and the defensive line to me plays a big role because even though the linebackers behind them are a solid group, it's not going to matter if they're playing cleanup duty instead of being disruptive. Because if they can be disruptive, you're going to see a group that will once again be very fun to watch. And having Marlo Wax back is a huge return for them. I think that was one of the more underrated retain, I guess, the retainees, if you will, because you lost Lowry, you lost Thompson, you've lost a number of talented linebackers over the past couple of years. So getting Marlo Wax back was huge. 92 tackles for him last year, 3.5 tackles for loss. Next to him, Derek McDonald, a solid season for him. And I think that you're in good hands at the linebacker position. Anwar Sparrow's a great piece. West Virginia transfer James Hurd Jr. is another player to keep an eye on. So there's definitely guys that can make plays. But again, if that defensive line isn't doing its part, it's not going to matter what the linebackers do. So that's going to be probably the focus for this team is what can the front group do, specifically the guys that aren't named Fadil Diggs. And when you look at what this group has, talent is not a question. It's not a matter of do you have the right guys for the job. It's just that do you have the guys who can execute? Can you make plays when you need them to the most? And that's obviously on Elijah Robinson. Finding ways to get guys in good position, finding ways to get them to be disruptive. But again, a lot of talent on this side of the ball that makes it really exciting. I really am excited to watch Marlo Wax again. Now that he is the guy for this linebacker group, it'll be fun to see how he produces. Can he have his best season yet? Again, another guy that people know what he can do, people know what he's capable of. It's just that this is a good example. Derek McDonald is a solid, option B. He is a very good playmaker that knows how to get to the quarterback, knows how to get to the ball carrier, has that athleticism to get out in space and make an impact for this defense. So there, even though there are some moving pieces, there is still plenty to like about this group. And it's really going to come down to what does this front group do because the secondary should be in good hands with the players that they have returning. And there's a guy that we'll talk about here in Justin Barrett at 6'4", 231 pounds. The frame stands out the most because you just don't see that kind of frame in the secondary very often. When you do, you instantly get more attention. You instantly are under the spotlight. But I think Elijah Robinson has a flexible player who can I don't want to say give them an extra linebacker, but you can move him around various different places. And he's shown that he can be a productive playmaker. 90 tackles last year, 5 tackles for loss, 1 interception. So he's capable of doing, and now, it's this new system, but this is a multi-year player who knows how to play college football, who knows how to succeed in the ACC. So you combine that frame with his experience, and now you have a guy who can move around for this defense, who knows how to get guys in the right position. And its secondary is going to be a strength to me of this defense. It's going to be a good group, and Barron is just the beginning. Deuce Chestnut, Syracuse fans probably remember him from 2 years ago. There was a lot of excitement surrounding Deuce Chestnut, and it's one of the reasons why he eventually left, unfortunately. So that's unfortunate, but he's back after going to LSU, and I think that Syracuse fans will welcome him with open arms because of what he's capable of doing. Another guy that probably is flying under the radar is Elijah Clark. When you look at what the secondary needed, they needed some stability after this past year. Now, this is a group that finished 79th against the pass. So there's obviously room for improvement. There's obviously things that they can do better. But when you talk about Justin Barron, Deuce Chestnut, and Elijah Clark, you can do a lot worse than that group. But you're looking at, I like that trio. That's a trio that a lot of people, a lot of programs probably wouldn't mind having on their roster. It's just going to come down to, can they re-gel? Because Chestnut and Barron, I think, will be able to do a lot of good things on the back end of the defense. And maybe Barron is more actually rotating that flex player, and Clark and Chestnut find that chemistry on the back end. But that's a trio of players that you have to figure out, how are you going to rotate them around? How are you going to move them around? Where are you going to position them? But like I said, you can do a lot worse than those three. That's just how good that trio is going to be. Jaden Bellamy is another player to keep an eye on. A solid option, a little bit smaller than those other three, but that's kind of easy to do when you have those three and what they bring to the table. To me, an underrated player in the transfer portal was getting Devin Grant. The Buffalo transfer comes in, another 6'4" player. Where are you going to line him up? Are you going to line him up at corner? Do you want to put him at safety? Buffalo did a couple different things with him, and the production obviously stood out the most. He's a natural playmaker, knows what to do when the ball is in the air. Can he handle life in the ACC? That is a different level of play from the MAC. That is a big jump to make. If he's not ready, then a guy like Marcellus Barnes Jr., the freshman from Tennessee, could step up and play that role as well. You have a number of other options that can step up and be rotational players. I don't think anybody really replaces Barron, Chestnut, or Clark, but the cornerback position probably is the biggest question if you have to pick one for this secondary. The safety position appears to be fine, but is the cornerback position going to be ready? Is a guy like Greg Delane going to have to step up? Is Barnes going to have to step up as a freshman? I think that Barnes will. He's already making some noise. The staff really liked what they saw from him, and he's going to push for starting time. And it's just a matter to me, probably, of if he's going to start this year or if he's just going to be a rotational player with Grant and Bellamy, and then just wait until next year when he's for sure the guy. Now, strengths and weaknesses. This obviously is, the first one could be a strength. It also could be a weakness. A lot of that hinges on what Aranda Gatson is going to be able to do in terms of his health, in terms of his abilities. We know what he looks like at 100%. Can you get back to 100%? That's probably the biggest question. Linebacker to me is also a strength. Marlo Wax and Derek McDonald are two solid players. We talked about Anwar Sparrow, a great backup to have, and you're just going to get a lot of really good plays from that group. We talked about the secondary. Even with my questions with Bellamy and Grant at the cornerback position, I really like what they have there. You'll have a bright future with Marcellus Barnes Jr. as well. Concerns to me is going to be wide receiver depth. Yes, you have some really good players. and you have players with potential like just Strauss Simmons, but who's going to be the guys behind them? Who do they have a rotation of, 3 to 5 guys that are going to step up? Because if you don't have that, that's really where things can get a little bit concerning. We already talked about Gadsden's health as well. That's going to be a concern until he proves us otherwise. Defensive line depth. We already talked about that pretty much. Fidel Diggs, we know what he's capable of doing. The starters are also, I would say that there's some questions, but there's potential there. But who else can step up? Who else is going to be a big time playmaker and do what Syracuse needs in order to compete in this conference? The X factor to me is Kyle McCord. If truly it was just the high expectations at Ohio State, then we're going to see that pretty early. We're going to see that Kyle McCord will thrive in his new system, in his new team. And if that's not the case, then it wasn't the expectations, it was the player. But I have a feeling when you look at what his production was from last year, and when you go back and look at the film, you're seeing a guy who is still a good player. He just needed a new start because he couldn't meet the expectations that I don't know if he ever was going to meet, but I think that he'll meet them at Syracuse. Looking at the schedule, the over under of 7 wins seems a little high. I probably wouldn't touch this one just because there's so many different things. The Ohio game should be a win. Georgia Tech is a much better team, so that is going to be a coin flip game to me. Stanford, I don't really know what we're going to get from Stanford. The fact that Stanford has to travel to Syracuse probably gives Syracuse the edge there. Holy Cross obviously is a win at UNLV. I really like when Power Five, and we can't really call it Power Five anymore. So I probably should stop saying that, but I really like when these bigger schools go to the group of five and play at, we have a number of those that they play at the group of five stadium. And granted, this is in Las Vegas. We're playing in the Raiders Stadium, so it's not really like you're playing at UNLV, but that is a random game. Talk about random games in college football, those are the best. In October 5th, Syracuse at UNLV. What a most random game you probably could think of. Syracuse probably going to win that game, but yeah, actually, I don't even know. I would say it's closer to a coin flip now that I think about it because UNLV's offense will probably be explosive once again. Even though they lose their quarterback, they're losing a couple of talented players. They still have an explosive offense. I probably still give Syracuse the edge, but it's definitely closer to a coin flip than I think people realize. At NC State, most likely going to be a loss. I don't think Syracuse is on that level of NC State quite yet. Pitt is going through quite a bit of turnover and they're trying to figure things out. So that's probably a win despite being on the road. That's a little bit of a difficult challenge, but I really like Syracuse there. Virginia Tech's an interesting game. I think Syracuse can hang with them, but I like Virginia Tech a little bit more in that game. But again, Syracuse at this point, if we see a team that's, let's see, if they win, they're starting the season on a hot streak, then this game is definitely not out of the realm of ideas in terms of winning that football game, especially because it's at home. Virginia Tech coming to Syracuse gives them a little bit of an edge. At Boston College could be an underrated game between these two. If these two teams are better than advertised, then that could be a really fun game. Boston College is going under the Bill O'Brien era, so they have a new coach as well. It'll be fun to see what these two programs look like at this point of the season. At Cal is challenging. I think that Syracuse is the better team, but the fact that you have to go all the way to the West Coast, that's something we'll keep an eye on. What do these ACC schools look like when they have to go all the way to the other coast? And then vice versa. What does Stanford and what does Cal look like when it's an ACC game, a conference game, and they're traveling all the way to the East Coast? UConn will be a win. Miami's most likely going to be a loss. Ceiling to me for this team is 8-4. Floor is 4-8. I think that you have guaranteed wins. I shouldn't say guaranteed, but guaranteed wins. Ohio, Holy Cross. To me, Pitt is one of those as well. UConn, you for sure have 4 wins on the schedule at a minimum. You're looking at a team probably around 6-6, 7-5. I don't think they get any higher. 8-4 would be a really good year. I don't think they get any higher than that. But this is still a really intriguing team. Syracuse is fun. Fran Brown is in obviously for a difficult challenge, but I think that he is prepared for it. He has already made some moves that indicate that he can get guys to come to Syracuse. He's a good recruiter. He knows how to get the players to invest, even if they're in the transfer portal and whatnot. So it'll be a fun team to watch, an intriguing team to watch, and we'll see where they end up in the ACC once the season is over.